All right, everyone. I'm Ken Mocabee. I'm senior partner at Perix, and this is my partner, Cesar Keller. He's our CEO. And today we're going to be talking about transforming launches into campaigns and how to maximize your impact when you hit the marketplace. And I think this is an important topic and one that is not done very well by almost all product launches, product teams of all sizes. So before we get into that, Cesar, why don't you tell us a little bit about Perix and about our Five Club?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a digital product studio. One of the things we always care about is the success of our customers. So when it comes to topics like these, it's not just about the work that we do, whether it's a two-sided marketplace, a custom web application, a native mobile application, you name it. There's all kinds of custom things that we do in this world. But when it comes to product, it's not just the technology that you're delivering, right? It's the business model, the SaaS subscription, the how to onboard customers. So I'm just excited about the topic today because you can be very strategic when it comes to launches. Our goal as Pericus is to deliver value, whether you're a customer or not. So hence this webinar series. And there's a lot of data that supports why products fail. And it's a pretty big number. So rather than focus on the big percentage, we try to focus on the small percentage. And that's what, successful product teams do that other product teams don't. And let's live by those principles to give you the best absolute chance to be successful. So it's like that whatever it takes kind of attitude in a positive way. But that being said, yeah, interesting topic that we can share because launches are sometimes an afterthought. Based on the 20 plus years of experience that I have, you need to start planning that strategy way sooner than you think. So yeah, excited to be a part of the topic today.
Yeah, when we started talking about this recently, as we're coming up on this event, I remember this old video from UPS, and I'll share it in our blog. And it was, that this small startup company's launching a marketplace. They flip the lights on and immediately get a couple of orders. They're high-fiving, they're all excited, and then it goes to a few hundred, and then it goes to a few thousand, and then tens of thousands, and then a few 100,000, and they're all like, "Oh my gosh," you know. And I and of course that's a fantasy. Everybody would love to be in that position if you're a startup. Um, but it is a fantasy. And I think a lot of times product teams, not just startups, they launch a product and they just don't get the traction they expected. It's a lackluster kind of response. They really haven't done the preparation to find that momentum coming out of the starting blocks, and it really stalls them sometimes. So we're going to talk a little bit about how product teams can do a better job with that and really do it the right way.
Absolutely. Let's cover some of the pain points just to make sure that we're all kind of synced up and on the same page. And then let's share some additional stories here. The first one is I'm just speaking from experience. A lot of times, the sales and marketing strategy, the go to market strategy, is like an afterthought during the product build. And I just think that is such a big mistake, right? It's like we'll cross that bridge when we cross that bridge. It should be a strategy that is set, in parallel to the actual product build. And I think a lot of stakeholders wait until it's too late, unfortunately. So that's just one thing that I see as a particular pain point. And then the other thing is a lot of stakeholders that I know, they're not from this product world, right? They had this idea, they're ready to get it out, but they actually treat the launch like a one-day event. And we know that that's not the way it goes. It's not one of those we'll build it and they will come type of a thing. You have to go out of your way to give yourself the best success of that particular launch because there's a ton of traction and momentum at that point. You certainly don't want to lose that traction when you get to the launch period. And then the third one is just many don't consider certain aspects of, I'll say, branding that go hand in hand with value proposition, that go hand in hand with this is the nomenclature and this is the verbiage that you have to have when you're speaking to your target audience, right? If you really pay attention to that up front, not only can you start getting the right angle from a marketing and branding perspective, but you can actually leverage your culture, meaning the actual people that are working on the product and the iterations. We always talk about iteration, right? Of actually getting involved with the customer. So if you do all those things right, you're going to have plenty of language to go and work on to start planning out these campaigns in the future. But if you don't treat that accordingly, I think you're losing a lot of the core value of why you're doing the project in the first place, right? Um, so anyway, I'll cover some of those things a little bit more in detail. But those are the pain points that sometimes this is an interesting topic because we see these as pain points, but sometimes the stakeholders that are involved that don't have as much experience, they don't have that particular experience. All right, well, let's get into some stories here. The first one that I wanted to share is just a little bit about my experience. I was fortunate to be a part of a team that was involved in many two-sided marketplaces. And the reason that I mention this is whenever you're building a two-sided marketplace, the launch is a little bit more complicated than a standard product. The reason that I say that is the marketplaces typically have a minimum, that's why they call them two-sided, right? It's kind of like two different users that come into the mix, and how those two users interact together is what gives you that flair for the potential transaction and the value of the marketplace. But that means that you have to market strategically and sell to and sign up and onboard two different set of users so they can interact. And if your conversion point doesn't have enough people in that marketplace, it's hard to get it off the ground because obviously two-sided marketplaces, one of the base factor is basically Metcalfe's law, which is the how many interactions you can actually have between people. If LinkedIn only had 10 people versus the millions and millions of people that are on that platform, the network effects themselves wouldn't be high value. So that's where these marketplaces really, really sing, the ones that are the most popular ones that we can think of, right? Like Airbnb, eBay. I mean, you name these big two-sided marketplaces, they're incredible, right? LinkedIn, because they have so many people and those network effects are really, really high. So learning from that scenario, we would implement a lot of strategies up front to talk about how are you going to sell and market to this side of the marketplace? How are you going to sell and market to that side of the marketplace? And oh, by the way, strategically, which side of the marketplace do you need to influence first to get a whole bunch of signups to make the other side a little bit easier, right? So that forced strategy is where I started seeing the value of starting thinking about the launch a lot earlier. And I think that's just something to share, right? Not that all projects are two-sided marketplaces, but the principle of how it is thought about is kind of important. So I just want to kick it off with that particular story. Do you have one that you want to share? And then I got another one that I can kind of go into.
Yeah, I do. And I think that's a really good point is that product launches are never a singular event. Yes, maybe that there's a day when you sort of launch your full product after an MVP, run and that sort of thing. But there's a whole bunch of things that lead up to that point that you can do interaction. Now, there's some startups that are in stealth mode, and they may just want to stay under the radar screen, which I get that. But for the vast majority of startups, that engagement period starts extremely early. We've got one of our clients that is in the construction industry, has a platform that they built, and they had half of it built, and there's the other half that's still in the works. And so they were kind of testing out the market and that sort of thing. But one of the things that really helped them a lot is, we said, why don't you try to get some letters of intent, and they thought, that might work. They didn't know if it would work or not. And it did. It absolutely did. And they landed multiple letters of intent for really high value projects. And that just helped them in a lot of ways, helped them with their investors, helped them with their focus on what they were going to be working on, because they got early feedback from those users who had committed to paying. So you can do these things really, really early, and it doesn't always have to be this sort of splashy singular event. It can be a rolling event, series of things that you do to build engagement. And I think a lot of the startups are kind of like you said, they're focusing on their products so intently that they forget about that continuous engagement opportunity that they've got.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great transition to kind of my story. And that was I recently completed a chief product officer program with MIT. And through this cohort, I was able to meet a successful CTO that actually was able to take a pretty nice exit on one of his products. And then after that success, he's like, what am I going to do? Well, he ended up actually moving to Dubai, and he's now a part of a venture studio group that actually invest in other projects and interesting technology. And through just conversations back and forth type of thing, this kind of topic came up. And I'm like, yeah, what is one of the criteria, or how do you, obviously as a CTO that has experience in building products and being on the board, tell me a little bit about how you go about validating ideas and whatnot. Which ones are you going to invest in? And this specific topic of due diligence came up. And that's like one of the things that we really take seriously is if we're going to consider investing money, we actually want to talk to potential target customers. We want to find out how interested they are in potentially buying this product and what the price should be. Very similar to letters of intent, although that specific idea didn't come up, but they were literally basically interviewing prospects on the opportunity of how interested would you be in this product, even before an investment is made. And I just thought that was like, okay, that's pretty good due diligence, right? So not only are you doing here's the data, here's the research, here's the problem that we want to solve, but you're already jumping all the way to, is this something that the market is going to receive eloquently? Present feedback back to us, and let's use that as due diligence to even see if we're going to put money into this thing, irregardless of how great the idea is. Because as you and I know, it doesn't matter how good a product is, if you don't have a customers paying for that particular product, you're not going to be a sustainable product that's going to last long. So I was like, wow, and oh, by the way, the whole thinking about campaigns instead of a launch, think about how much information and feedback can come out of due diligence like that. Or think about the people that are prepared to, hey, we need to get an investor. Well, if smart investors are asking for this stuff, this needs to be something that you care about way early on. So it goes kind of hand in hand with your story, and I thought it was good to share. That's how important some of these aspects are. But as we transition into let's cover some of the base topics, right? What is the ultimate goal that we're trying to say here? And that it's about extending this launch process beyond a single event. And really, we're talking about weaving it into a broader narrative, multiple touch points, in a series of events to give you the best shot. Or else it's going to be crickets, right? How many times have you heard of companies like, man, we spent so much time, so much things, whatever, it's live, it's crickets. Now what? Well, that's the wrong time to be thinking about the strategy, right? So starting earlier and knowing that this is something that is going to happen, you have time for it, so just be smart about it. And this allows you to have so much more opportunity when it comes to your launch.
Yeah, I think that is the key. Starting early is fundamental to this. If, as you were talking about earlier, that this is a dialogue that you're having with your customer. It's not just a marketing strategy where you're just, one way pushing out information about your product. It is that dialogue. It's that conversation. It's that interaction. It's where you're iterating your product early on. And the goal is to find the elusive product market fit, which everyone is trying to find. And if you can do that and demonstrate that as early as possible, you're way ahead of the game.
I think one of my favorite quotes, and I wish I could remember who said it, but it was something to the effect of, strategy is one thing, but when it comes to culture, culture eats strategy for lunch, because you're trying to build the right people around this effort, right? And establishing your why early on goes beyond what you're trying to solve. It goes beyond the root problem, in my opinion, right? Especially if you really care about culture. So one of the things that we really talked about in this, Chief Product Officer program was, how do you establish that culture right away? And how do you leverage that to build an amazing brand? And how do you choose to design the hierarchy of your organization that's going to solve this root problem, that in turn you need to communicate this out to the world? So it's not just about the product, it's you're gathering all these really smart people that are going to be intensely working on this product because they want to deliver this product to the world. So one of the first things that we can talk about is, this is where you establish your why, right? Don't you have to, as a stakeholder that's putting this team together, you need to hire and partner up with the right people that have the right dynamic to solve this problem. And when you get a whole bunch of people and their why on the same page, that's pretty powerful. That's a great foundational start. What do we do beyond that? Well, Once you start hiring the right people, now you start creating the culture of this is how we walk, this is how we talk, this is how we solve problems, this is what we do, why we do. It's very strategic. Now you start building this culture that reinforces your brand so that at any point in time that you're talking to customers or the public or whatnot, you're really driving engagement and you're learning how to speak the right way to attract those prospects. And I think that is kind of critical, piggybacking on the why, right? Because this is what's starting to formulate some of these strategies as to who's our ideal customer, out of all the markets that are available, how do we segment those markets? What's the right go-to-marketing strategy? And then from there, it's now you can start preparing the right materials, the right information, the right videos, the right support. All of these things are critical for launch, right? And a
Mhm.
lot of people think that they can do these things and kind of sweep them on the rug at the end,
Yeah.
but you lose a lot of strategy when you're not doing it, what I call in parallel to the product development. Now, it doesn't mean you have to start all of this necessarily on day one. I'm just saying treat it as a marathon over time to give you plenty of time to digest it and do it right, rather than a sprint that you're just trying to do at the very end when the product is good to go. And that allows you to, once you have all this, I'll call it acumen, sales enablement tools, marketing, language, things that you can engage with and provide value-added content. Now you have a mechanism to go, okay, how do we take all these assets and how do we start creating multiple events with multiple groups at multiple levels so that our launch is not one day, one event? Because you've already done the hard work, but give yourself enough time to plan that window and plan those series of events. And there's lots of cool things that we're going to talk about that you can do. But that in a nutshell is the overall strategy, right? It's the don't wait to the end, leverage a lot of what the Five Club is doing and force yourself to come up with, okay, what are these campaigns that we can kind of pull off?
So what you're saying is that the earlier you start, the better, within reason, um, and that creating that audience, creating those users that are excited about your product and are ready to go and ready to buy when you do finally launch and you've gotten to that point is really critical. And so, where do you start engaging with users? I know that we talk a lot about prototyping and a lot about user research and understanding who the customer is. At what point do you start really starting to engage with those users? I mean, hopefully, if you've gotten some exposure in the marketplace and people are aware of what you're doing, then you can sort of leverage that at some point. And where do you start, presenting and trying to build momentum and excitement in the marketplace? And I guess the worry is that if you go too soon, then people have an anticipation that you're going to launch, sooner than you may be you're ready to launch, and so you could lose some of that momentum there. So how do you balance that with those factors?
Yeah, that's the number one question that we were asked when I were doing consulting. I think that there's two ways to think about launches, right? There's kind of like private launches, and then you can think about like soft launches where it's semi public, and then the official launch. I don't know how many of our audience members have heard of restaurants, right? But restaurants do this all the time. They'll do what's called a soft launch at the restaurant, where it's like friends and family. They go through practicing, rehearsing, all that stuff, and that way they get feedback from these particular people to make sure that all the services provided at that restaurant are good to go, and then they have their grand opening to the public. Well, products can be the same way. So let's go back to what you were saying about smart ideas at the beginning, right? Whether it's due diligence for investment or whether it's just smart things that you're doing, letters of intent or communication with potential buyers, maybe a sign off on saying that, you know what, we might not intend to buy, but at least we'll participate in your training program or we'll review the app and provide you feedback to see if we're interested at a given point. Uh, a lot of that pre-planning as to who you're going to expose the product to, maybe there's specific groups, specific markets and whatnot. This is where you can slap on a beta label, right? And this can be a private showing. This could be a private showcasing that you can have towards a launch. So you can start thinking about some soft launch opportunities. And guess what? just because you can do that in soft launch doesn't mean that you can't do that earlier on. So you can say, well, the product is not done, but we're going to give you a prototype view of this thing so you can give us feedback right now. And what you're doing is you're kind of hearing out objections. And that's the iteration process, right? That's the what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And you're validating as you go. Well, the validation is a part of the strategy, but all this information that you're collecting, the closer you get to launching, you have all these groups and all these people that you can reach out to before the launch. You can offer them promos. You can offer them the product for free for a while. You can get like the last set of feedback right before you're like, okay, this is MVP. We are good to go. So that's the process that can start early. Uh, a soft launch is a little bit more than a beta. This is where you're maybe opening up to a specific market, but not everyone else yet. So now you can establish a little bit of that. Hold up, this is not available to everyone yet, but I'm super interested. Now you can get like a waiting list going. You can get like some anticipation going, knowing that you're very, very close because you're comment about the timing. You don't want to do this too early, but now there's a buzz that you're building up, and then finally like an official big launch through a series of events and things that you're doing. So keep in mind, you don't have to launch publicly. There's lots of things that you can do in a private setting or in a limited setting, and that should fall into your strategy as well.
Yeah, we've seen things like apply for a private beta. So what you're doing is you're sort of putting some guardrails on the process and making it a little bit on the scarcity kind of building that momentum and building that excitement without having to go fully launching to the public and get those early adopters in. And talk a little bit about the early adopters and how important they are to when you're getting ready to launch and past the launch. How do you court those and how do you manage those early adopters?
So obviously it's a catch 22 in my opinion, right? Early adopters are great because it kind of gets you off the ground. I'll mention the negative side, and that is whatever momentum you have with early adopters, you can't take that for granted because there's a difference between early adopters that try the stuff and basically tilting it over into the full stream of all of your customers. And there's also some context that has to be thought about, right? When you are opening up your product, did you open your product to the entire market segment? In pitch decks that we talk about the TAM, SAM, SOM, right? It's like the servable addressable market and then the subgroups are based on. So did you launch this to the entire market? Because inside of that market, there are subsegments of markets. And inside of those subsegments, there are early adopters that are based on different categories. So you just got to make sure that your data and your projections are not skewed based on unrealistic data. And by the way, whatever turns on early adopters might not be the same thing that turns on other customers in the future. That's the negative side, right? And you just got to be very practical. You got to pay attention to the data, and you just got to be honest with yourself that if you're having super success with early adopters, don't think that you're just going to kill it and crush it by not paying attention to that other data and those other simulations. That's the negative side. On the positive side, though, I mean, early adopters and being very strategic with a given market or a subsection of that market, sometimes it's referred to as the beachhead market, that can give you some early projections. Now, why is that important? Well, if that was your MVP and that was your go-to-market strategy, guess what? You don't have to solve all the problems and have all the features that would provide a solution for that entire market. So your speed to get out and your speed to launch, that means a lot, right? It means a lot because you're saving costs on unnecessary things. But that also means that you have anchors and blinders and you're really targeted to a very given audience, which gives you the capability to be very strategic about how you're going to launch inside of that market with the context of those early adopters. Mm-hmm. I think that's the positive side. You're not trying to be like, hey, everybody, every hat, every scenario, every person, come and get this. You are limiting the bandwidth to a very, very specific user audience. And I think that can help you gain some early traction once you launch, if you've paid attention to those details.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because we see startups a lot of times that are trying to go way too big. They want to capture the entire market. And sometimes it happens that way. Sometimes you can have that kind of impact and splash, but for the vast majority of new products on the marketplace, you probably are going to be looking for that beachhead where you want to get some of those early adopters, keep it tight to a particular smaller subgroup of the entire market, and you can almost expand and grow your reach over time. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we see sometimes, startups think that they have to have everything in including the kitchen sink in their initial product, and it's just an overreach. It's almost impossible to do that. And by focusing on a subgroup and really their specific needs, you can really have some huge impact, lower your cost, and then iterate from there.
Yeah, in my opinion, the only companies that can afford to go all out are the companies with tremendous, strong funding. They're successful companies already or investors of other very successful companies. But guess what? These people are successful winners. And I guarantee you that even though they have the budget, they have the money, and they can go as deep as they want to, they're pretty smart. It's all about calculated risks. So even the best of the best with almost unlimited resources, guess what? They're still going to implement the strategies of a smart go-to-market. And they're still going to limit that marketing segment. And they're still going to be very smart about how they release their MVP. So even companies with all the resources in the world, they still choose to break it down and to be smart. So why wouldn't you with a limited pocket, right?
Yep.
Uh,
So
Go ahead.
why don't we talk a little bit about brand building and the importance of that and how you do that the right way? Because I think a lot of startups and product teams, they don't think about the brand. They're focusing on the product, which is fine. You need to have a product that's successful, but how do you really coordinate that with a successful brand strategy?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the way I like to leverage brands is like attracting the right people, right? It's we stand for this. We do this because we are craftsmen of this platform and this problem. We see ourselves and our identity through solving this problem. And we ultimately care to help you, the user, with this product in this way. So if you take a lot of that messaging, right, you're trying to create definition and you're trying to create a persona, if you will, that other people can look at that and go, you know what? I believe in that why. That's pretty awesome that they're doing that. I want to be a part of that in some way. I want to leverage that product because I believe the same things that they believe. Now, the difference between branding and culture to some degree, which I think both of those go hand in hand, in my opinion, is that who you hire, how they think, why they joined, why they're working on this problem is equally as powerful as what you say about the brand. So now you're reinforcing the brand with actions and engagement, meaning we do this every day. We have this strategic session. We have these rituals, and everyone here is helping each other trying to solve this specific problem. Well, now you're reinforcing the brand like, wow, these guys really care about this problem. So if you care about this problem or solving this problem or what this thing is producing, you have a better shot at getting people interested in engaging with you. So I think that culture supports the brand and the brand supports the culture. And it's a self-perpetuating thing that creates, I think, some hype and some momentum to a certain degree. The key here is capturing that through proper marketing channels, right? Whatever that communication's out, you have to tell that story, right? You have to tell here's our progress with this thing that we're tackling. This is our lifestyle when it comes to solving this thing. We're never going to stop trying to make this thing better, right? If you do that the right way, you're going to have the right language to put out in the universe for people to find you and go, I want to be a part of that. That sounds pretty amazing, right? Does that guarantee that you're going to get customers? No, but at least gives you a really good shot at connecting and engaging and having empathy for those people that believe in what you believe. And I think that is what starts setting the tone on some of these companies that are just better branded than others.
So what you're saying is you want to focus on, getting back to the why. It's what your value proposition is, not just on the features and functions, which are important. Everybody wants to know what your product does, but ultimately, what's its value? How's it going to be, effective in your organization? How it's going to change your lives? How's it going to make your workflows easier? How it's going to improve your profitability if you're a B2B or whatever those things are. Those are the things you focus on as opposed to just these are our features and functions and how great our product is. It's really the value that it brings.
Right. And when it comes to, launching, right, this is where you celebrate the milestone. This is where you put your team in front of everybody else. This is the result. Look what we did. Look what we built. This is how now you can start talking about the impact and the change in the world that you're going to be making. I am proud to announce that this team of people work their butts off to create this thing that's going to have impact in the lives of. Notice how that story is different than come get our product, right? Uh, I mean, we kind of live it too. And what I'm saying, by the way, I'm not saying it, I live it. Like, look at what we did with the rebranding of Parix. And just if I can steal a couple minutes, right, just to share, Parix is all about what we as partners define here at the agency. It's like, we're not successful unless our clients are successful. And the caveat is we can build things on budget and on time and deliver functional code and technology that does and gives you the results that you wanted. But does that mean that our customer is going to be successful? That is limited to software specs. And we are a digital product studio. That is not enough. So what do we have to do? Well, that means that the UX UI of the actual interface needs to be a joyful, positive, intuitive, accessible experience. So the software can't just, A plus B equals C. Like we can't just deliver. It's got to be a positive experience that people go, wow, okay, this is awesome. I want to use this tool, right? We need to think about the pricing. We need to think about the marketing, the branding, the launch, the customer service, because all those things matter as well. So it's not just building the tool set. It's really thinking about this whole product as a business and making it sustainable through great design, great technology, great process, and making it sustainable. So no, delivering the product is not enough. How we hire in our company. People have to have a high system of caring that all the details are right. It's not about going through the motions, getting it done as quickly as I can, what's next, and this is the job. We have designers, developers, analysts, managers, whatever, and they are all about the craft of designing successful digital products. They care about every single detail. Those are the kinds of people that we need, not just an average developer or an average designer. They have to care way more because we play in a hyper competitive space, right? So how we molded Parix and how we created the brand, how we created the culture, how we say it takes a village, no silos. These are all things that we're trying to do so we can tell the appropriate story. So when you meet and work with us, you know what we're all about. You know our why, and hopefully that attracts people to this business. Same with the launch. If you don't have that story that can engage and tell people this is why we're fully committed to this problem and why we live, eat, breathe, sleep this thing, I think it's harder to get sales. And I think it's harder to do some, joyful marketing type of a thing. So I think that's where it plays a role. And the sooner you have strategy around that, I think it's just easier to build the product with the right teams, the right messaging, and getting the word out.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I think that level of commitment to the customer is so critical. We talk about that all the time. We talk about stewardship, which is maybe it's a word that we take seriously. If we're in charge of a budget and a product and an idea and a business, and pivotal to their success, that's something that we really take seriously. We think our clients should do the exact same thing. You're not just publishing a product, you're helping solve a problem and you're creating value. And if you focus on those things, then your product is going to be much better focused and much better targeted to those problems and have much better value. But we see this all the time where people are just sort of focused on, creating new features and functions and so forth, without really thinking about what their value is. And they're doing it in a silo without the customer engagement. And I think that's really kind of getting back to what you were talking about early, is starting that process very early on and having iteration, and making sure that you're lined up with the needs and problems and pain points of your customers. And that just starts extremely early. So I think we're up against our up against our time. Anything else that you wanted to add before we sign off here?
Yeah, just two quick things. Number one is referral strategy. Uh, Whenever you get to the point where you're about to launch, if you find someone that's interested and you find someone that really believes in this, they might know other people like, oh, you got to take advantage of that. And if you've thought about a referral program where you refer someone, you can give those particular users a discount, a promo, or to share a promo code. You never know where referrals can take you, and that's a very powerful thing. So thinking through that a little upfront is a good piece. And maybe the next one is waitlist, right? As you go through the different market segmentation, as you're starting to release, I'll call it this gray world where you're not full launch, but you're in soft launch mode or a little bit in between. You can create and allow people to sign up early. And that way you're creating a pipeline of engagement and potential users. So those two little strategies can also help. And again, rushing through the strategy of something like that at the very end is not something that's ever going to work. So if you just start pulling these ideas in a little bit early into the equation, you'll have more options and you can have more timed events, which is good.
Awesome. Well, Cesar, this has been fun. I think we covered a lot of ground here.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ken. Appreciate you. And until the next one.